And here we are, straight shooting, bam, bam, bam. You know what to expect on my show. It's Benji Ndolo here. Today we're going to take a slightly different turn. My show is not just about politics or governance or governments, because life is not just about politics per se. It's very important, but life has to be holistic. Life is about many things, many facets, many realities. And fundamental to those, to life, is family. So today we're going to take a social angle and talk about family. We're going to talk about parenting. We're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about, one of the new topics nowadays is toxicity. How do you know what a toxic parent is? How do you gauge? How do you measure? I saw a lot of discussion just about 2 weeks ago when a guy that I know, that I've worked with, who is a producer for one of the top guys that has been the host of The Bench. His mom came and made this video recording and it went viral. It went viral nationally and internationally. And she said, I've not seen my son for 5 years. She was crying. My son, I don't know where he is. My son cut off all communication. I haven't seen him. I don't know where he is, what he's doing. Why must we live this way? And then that got online furor. The typical. We're a black Africa, by the way. We're a black continent. So the typical reaction is always, oh, that's his mom. Moms are perfect. Except they're not. Most moms are amazing. Most moms, naturally, because they are nurturers, because they carry life, because they're a vessel. Most mothers, especially, and many dads, are good dads. They are strong dads, loving dads, who provide leadership, who illuminate the way, who take ownership and possession, who know how to play their part, to guide and lead and inspire. Okay? But not all of them. And one of the things as Africans that we've gotten very wrong is to support bad behavior, to fuel bad behavior, using the excuse. And I saw this a lot when in my activism days. You have even child abuse. An uncle touching a child inappropriately, a minor, a 12-year-old, say somewhere in, Mijikenda country, in the coast. And when the child speaks, they tell him, usiongea mambo ya wazee. Usituletee aibu. That's how they say. Usituletee aibu. They don't look at the offender. They don't look at the transgressor. They just look at, no. They look at image. And that's why we are what you call a reticent society. Reticent. R-E-T-I-C-E-N-T. You can use the dictionary or Google that if you don't understand the meaning of that word. A reticent society. A hush-hush society. In Tanzania, they call it kimya kimya. Kimya kimya, don't say. If your mom is bad, don't tell anybody. Hide. Pretend. Make her even look good. Really? And so, in creating that space, that's how impunity thrives. Because in creating the space for defending an aggressor, you give impunity oxygen. That's how impunity grows and thrives. And someone becomes an abuser and then a super abuser and a repeat abuser. So, I wanted to just look at what is a toxic parent. And I wanted to give you guys some guidelines. Because we're still behind, There are those who will now come here and say, you're trying to be woke. We are not woke. We are Africans, etc., etc. We are Africans. So it's okay. Hata mzazi akifanya nini ni mzazi wako. Just accept it. I'm going to give you guys a small guideline. I interact with people. In my line of work, I interact with people from all walks of life. Manual laborers to presidents and prime ministers. So I get very many perspectives and I'm able to filter and process and come up with a finding. So what is a toxic parent? How can you tell? Number one, If you doubt their love in any way, if you doubt the love of your father or your mother, in a sense, that's a toxic parent. If you have any doubt, any scintilla of doubt, any question, any gap, where they do something and you're like, huyu ni mzazi wangu kweli? They show that kind of selfishness. All they want maybe is your money or your time against your own things to do. Because I remember at the end of the day, every human being is an individual. So part of loving is not just getting what I want, it's also giving you what you want and need. So if they're putting you in a situation that is taking away from your college life for what makes you successful, and you ask yourself, this mzai, I've just become his pal for drinking, is this really my friend? Toxic parent. 2, if you have no bond, since you are born and raised, you are now 20-something, you are 30-something, you are 40-something, you are 50-something. You have no bond. You have nothing to discuss. You don't miss them. You don't identify on things together. Mukotu. You just go because your wife has said, or your husband has said, twende tukaone mama. You just go because you have fuel. You just go because the kids, that's their shosh or their shags or whatever. You have no bond. You have really nothing to share. Of course, no laughter, no joy, no happiness, nothing. Red flag. That's probably a very toxic parent, because there's always the underlying issues that led to this point, to this situation, as is. Number 3, if your parent is just an irritant, you just never understand what they're talking about, they just exist to exasperate you. And I'm not a pastor, but Ephesians 6, which our dad, for example, raised us on, children obey your parents, Ephesians 6:6, the very next verse, 7, which we avoid in Africa, says, parents, do not exasperate your children. Do not exasperate your children. It is abusive for me as a parent, as a dad, to kick people around in the house because I'm physically bigger. It is very immoral to guilt trip your children because you breastfed them, because you took them to school. Everything is founded at the right time on friendship. Once you get the window between 0 to 8 of forming character and guidance, getting into the habits, you don't beat another child at school unless you're bullied, you share, you do this. Once you get the values down, with time now, once you identify those boundaries, you have all the time to work on a real friendship. But if you're just there to be saying the wrong things, to be abusing them, like insults is very, very... I was looking at some stuff on Facebook, and if you just look at how most of our generation grew up, how we deal with the trauma is by laughing it off. Oh, ha, ha, ha. If your mother says things to you as a woman like, oh, naona umekuwa my co-wife, naona umekuwa bibi wa pili, squeeze you kona matako because of adolescence, and your body is forming. So you're also your father's girlfriend, that kind of thing. I saw another common one that a lot of Kenyans have endured is, oh, mtoto bure, so useless. Wewe si ungezaliwa mkate watu wakunywe chai. That kind of thing. So we laugh it off now, but it has can have lifelong devastating, damaging effects on a child, on a human being, on their self-esteem, on how they see themselves, on how they think of themselves, on the lack of affirmation, etc. So if your parent is an irritant, just an irritant, and especially a repeat one who doesn't grow or change with time, that's a toxic parent. And maybe at some point we'll talk about how to deal with toxic parents. If you, as a child, and a 90-year-old ni mtoto ata kwa mzazi. If you're 90, your parent is 110. That's a very conceivable reality. You're still mtoto wake. So if you as a child, You're waiting for your folks to die. You're waiting for them to die. That's a toxic family. You're just waiting for them to die. So many, they just wait so they can breathe a sigh of relief, respite. Of course, remember, a reticent society. So it's not like they go and announce this very loudly. But if you talk to people in a very intimate manner, the ones from toxic families, you realize, yeah, there are those who are waiting, wagawane mashamba, wauze manyumba, that kind of thing. If you're in any way not happy to have your aging parents, to just feel such a sense of fulfillment in taking care of them, in giving back to them, if you're waiting for them to die, that's a very toxic relationship, very toxic family. I think I mentioned this earlier. If you have no friendship, because now as grown-ups, even though you're their child, if you're 40, she's 70, or he's 75, your dad, this is now when you run companies together, you do things together, you do projects together, you share ideas. You know, I have a friend of mine who bought a home in Karen, a childhood friend of mine, and she told me, I just went and looked for my dad because he's such an expert in this stuff. And then he guided me, and now I felt the comfort. And she herself is very successful and very educated and very polished. Hi, Tonya. And she said, before I put any pen to paper, I just said, hey, Mzee, is this okay according to you? He's also an educated guy. And just that kind of daughter-father relationship is gold. It's priceless. It's platinum. You can't quantify that in money, in anything. And so if you have no friendship, many times, then you're drifting towards enmity. That's terrible. If you're a parent, we talked about sarcasm, use sarcasm on your colleagues, and even that's not advisable. Why have bile for your own child in the house? Take all that energy and take it to the political rallies and diffuse it there. Sarcasm. Here's another one that I really had thought through, the last two. There's something called sibling rivalry in families. And apparently sometimes it can spill out of siblings into parents, parent-child. So if you have unhealthy competition, if your parent doesn't want you to do a master's, usisome kumliko. If your parent doesn't want you really to live in Runda, usiishi fiti kumliko. If your parent is never happy to see you in a nice Pajero, a nice Prado, Range Rover, because they feel you're living a better life than I did. Oh my God. That's such a useless person. Mutu bure kabisa huyo. The typical classic African parent is a mother who walked barefoot. And I have many friends who have amazing mothers especially. She has walked barefoot. She has eaten roast sweet potato. Not that it's very healthy, by the way. And her delight is in visiting her kids in Muthaiga, bringing them all manner of things from her farm and all manner of love and affirmation. If you have an healthy competition, your mom's Jewish, she's saying, you bought me this shoe, but yours is more expensive. And you are a banker, she is not. And you are working, she is not. Mutu bure kapsa. Lastly, and this one you must pay attention to very, very, very carefully. Just imagine somebody in your own family, your own brother. Here I'm talking even to my producers who are the most amazing guys, by the way. You see how they do this show so well. Your own brother, your own dad, your own mom. Yani wewe kazi yako ni kuhustle. Na kazi yao ni defamation. Narcissism. Yani wanakuharibia jina to your wife, to your acquaintances, to your friends. Their work is to criticize you. Excessive criticism, or even any criticism, usually of a parent and a child, that's an acceptable and huge red flag. They're saying how you are just useless in school, huyu hata hana pesa, huyu hajui kufanya kazi, hajui kutafuta, any of that. Just imagine you are talking that way to someone's wife, and the someone is your own son or your own daughter. So you are hinting to her husband that yeye husband alioa mtoto wako wenye ni malaya. I've seen stuff like that. Wewe mama unaita mtoto wako malaya. Instead of guiding her quietly in the privacy of your home and in the security of your love. There's a day when I was new back from diaspora, I was somewhere and something happened and my car didn't work. And then they found, where I was staying at the time. And they found my dad, my late dad. And then he just took the thing very quietly. Then he told me, almost in a whisper, the two of us, Flani, they said that your car didn't go through. I was so humbled. Just the way he did it out of so much love. Of course, another one will even say, nimekulipia. So I just ran. It was, the processing didn't, and I left in a hurry, so I left it. But he didn't take it in any negative way. He didn't take it like I had any bad intention. When you treat people as if they are how they're supposed to be, it helps them become what they should be, and that's the definition of love. Did you know that? So, don't destroy your life because of bad signals and bad inputs that you're getting. That brings me to the last and final point. Because of something called recidivism. Residual recidivism. Recidivism is a phenomenon where if you are abused as a child, for example, chances are, and why this discussion is important, that you yourself will grow up to be an abuser. Okay? So you really resent how and this is research, by the way, you really resent how your father treated you when you were 7 years old. You even have sexual abuse, by the way. And then you wonder how at 70 yourself as a Catholic priest, this is very prevalent for some reason in that, how you yourself began to abuse altar boys and what have you. It's because you're not aware of recidivism. It's one of the worst things. It causes generational tension. So even in the family, if you had a bad relationship with your mother, with your father, it can lead to you having bad relationships with your wife or your wives, and then with your children. So it's generational tension and problems. That's why you need to be very aware of this so that you can take purposely a different course. There's always hope. Stud Struckle said, hope dies last. So you never have to, conform and agree and say, sisi tu kwetu tuko hivyo. Tunachapananga, tunatukanananga. Hapana. No. You don't accept mediocrity and justify mediocrity just to fit in. Know your abuser. Know your abuser. I've given you some of the indicators. And set boundaries. Or cut them off. It's up to you. Know your abuser. Set boundaries. Just say, you know what? I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to expose myself to this. I'm not going to expose my kids to this. This is not worth it for me. I'm worth more. Remember, a mother is a vessel. Life is from God, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. A mother is just a vessel. So think through what your life is, why you're here, what your purpose is. Set your boundaries. Know your abuser. I'm available for questions. Send questions through Twitter, through comments on the YouTube thing down there. Just write and let's talk. Let's have candid conversations. It's that straight shooting. I hope you guys got the point. Set boundaries, big time, and enforce them. We'll talk some other time. Have a really good time, guys, and thank you very much indeed.